to them because it has not, A, wrestled with the issues of the Palestinians and the control of Israel's control over the West Bank, B, has papered over some of the complexity of these issues, and C, when they have tried to engage in bringing in a Palestinian perspective or narrative, and I'm very careful here not to say an anti-Israel perspective or narrative, but a Palestinian perspective or narrative, very often their communities or their educational environments have silenced them or marginalized their voices or their concerns. And so they feel as if the Jewish communal leadership is unwilling to engage in discussions about these complicated issues around Israel and Palestine. If Not Now got some headlines this summer when there were a group of students on a birthright trip on a bus, and they decided to have a walk-off in the middle of the tour in order to highlight or demonstrate that the tour guide, the tour educator, was not willing to engage in complex questions about Palestinians. That is theatrics, right? The purpose of that was to try to draw attention to their cause. What I would argue in terms of Doobie's question is that the majority of these students, as much as they have been involved in serious Jewish education, they have not received serious Israel education. These are environments in which even if they did do Israel education, whatever that means, it tended to be based upon emotional relations, on this notion of identity education. Falafel and camels will make you feel good. Eating hummus is a natural part of who you are. This desire to wave flags on Yom HaAtzmaut, and did not engage in the kind of meaningful, critical education that they are accustomed to in every other subject that they engaged in, whether it was their secular studies or their religious studies. We're not talking about kids who went to a yeshiva for the most part. It's not who these kids are. They engaged in rigorous learning environments, and they feel as if their Israel education lacked that rigor, and that their educators were afraid of the questions that they might ask. That's the blessing of when you actually know this material, no question is going to scare you. Because even if you don't have an answer, you can say that, and you can help look at other documents or sources or conversations and feel as if it will continue to lead you in a direction of possibility and allow you to engage in a meaningful way with the content. These students feel as if their educators were afraid of that. Now, what I will say is that they're probably right. Most individuals who teach about Israel are terrified of what I'm asking them to do because they themselves do not have the foundational knowledge. They are not trained in this material, and I'm not criticizing that. It's just a reality. They don't have the proper support to become quote-unquote experts in this, or at least gain greater content knowledge for the ability to have greater confidence in transmitting that knowledge. Israel education, like Jewish education, is also complicated. This is not about the war of northern aggression. I don't look at this material from a detached, objective perspective, right? Their Jewish educators have educational objectives and goals that are to influence their identity. For the most part, they want them to have a positive relationship with this place. They want them to be able to have a meaningful interaction with Israelis. So how do they do this? Part of it is giving professional development to educators around Israel so that they can have and be rooted in content. Part of it is thinking about and disentangling that it's not only about studying the modern political issues facing the state of Israel. It's about Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, the people of Israel, the land of Israel, the state of Israel. And seeing that there are multiple entries into this conversation, and that just because you may criticize a particular Israeli policy doesn't mean you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's another component of this. On college campus, the issues with If Not Now and a few other organizations is that very often they actually don't want the conversation. They actually aren't looking to engage in real education, because real education is a give and take, right? It's student-centered, and it's a conversation in which the teacher provides scaffolding to help students how to be rooted in this foundation, but allows the student to move in different directions in order to explore and engage in critical thinking. And what happens on many college campuses, and we saw this at Brandeis most recently this fall, when the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Myron Kopolo, who's a very committed Jew, decided to come to Brandeis on an invitation to speak about his recent study tour in Palestine, right, with Palestinians, specifically in the West Bank. And he came in a spirit of, I want you to hear what I heard, and I want you to be part of that conversation and help me think about it. And they staged an entire protest and didn't allow him to speak. Well, that's not education. That's theatrics. So if these students, of If Not Now and other groups, want education, then they have to be open to serious education. And Hillel has to be open to serious education. Right? When I go to Hillel as a student and I want to go study in a chavruta, a particular text study, the rabbi doesn't check me at the door and say, do you keep halacha? Are you shomer Shabbos? Do you keep kosher? Of course not. I'm welcomed in to study a text. And what I do with that is up to me. We have to be able to do the same with Israel and Hillel. Because if we don't, you are going to lose an entire generation of students. So there's onus on the students to actually be open to learning and listening and not engaged in theatrics. And there's an onus on our leadership and our educators to actually be educated and not afraid of what it means to do serious education about Israel.
Great. Thank you very much.